You talked a bit about, and this is where both of you guys chime in on this. We talked about clauses in contracts. We talked about guarantees. We talked about contractors getting paid. One of the things that I really want to, and I know James, you and I have talked about it. We've heard our customers at SiteMax talk about it. Is prompt payment legislation. In Ontario, it's legislated. In Alberta, it was recently brought into law. BC is more of a floated idea with a little bit of pushback, from what I know. Maybe just a general discussion, really quick, around what is prompt payment, and then just kind of the nuances between how that really impacts you as a subcontractor, and how it can be. How it could be put into practice and have benefits.
The last I heard, BC was the only province that didn't have it.
It's one of the few that don't have it. So should I give a quick run? I mean, maybe your audience knows what prompt payment is.
No.
Go for it. Yeah. So I'll take Ontario. They have the Construction Act. It came into force, I think, 3 years ago now.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
And the idea being they've legislated payment flows through a project, and they require certain things like a proper invoice to be submitted to the owner of the project. And that invoice, once received, has to be paid within 28 days. And from receipt of that payment, the GC has to flow down funds within 7 calendar days. And so it goes down the contractual pyramid. So the idea behind it is that if there's any dispute on site or within a project, you have these intermediate or interlocutory mediation sessions where it's binding on the parties, but you pick a mediator and you get a decision within 30 days is the idea, unless you extend that timeline. So it's in theory, it's a very productive way and a productive use of assets, because you don't have to pay very expensive arbitrators if you go the private arbitration route. Judges are paid for through your taxes. So if you go through litigation, that's a different story. But oftentimes arbitration happens, and then you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars in fees for the private arbitrators and legal counsel. So the idea behind the prompt payment is both sides present their claims, and they pick through ODAC. It's this society that or association that has all of the qualified mediators regulated. They pick an ODAC mediator, and then the mediator issues his or her decision within 30 days is the idea. So that decision is final for the duration of the project. There is an idea that you can appeal a decision given by a mediator, but it's actually very difficult to do so based on the judge-made law that's happened to date. So it's something where the mediator has a lot of power, and it's worked in what I understand from speaking to counsel in Ontario. It's worked reasonably well in certain instances. Now, there's also there's two sides to this, because you want to, I suppose, create a fair and balanced view of it. So does it make sense to bring in prompt payment for the contractor who builds 4 single-family homes a year in BC? I just don't know the answer to that. Because why I say that is, for such a contractor who might have 1 or 2 people at head office, maybe no one at head office, who is going to deal with the claim prep? Who has the money to hire a lawyer to deal with a unilateral mediation session during your project? Not many. So you also don't want to overcomplicate the procedures on site for a smaller shop.
For sure.
If you have a company that's massive, right, 100,000 employees, they can easily deal with these processes. But the smaller you get, I think you got to be careful to strike a good balance between overcomplicating it and making it work for everyone. So I'm very much supportive of the government bringing it in. I know they have a task force since January 2022. They're working on it. The BCCA and the VRCA are heavily pushing it. But I think we need to strike a really fair balance in all of this, so it works for the industry.
Would it make sense for this to have like a a spectrum, like different scales based on the amount of, let's say you have it's based on revenue basically. So for that smaller stuff, let's say you say you got 4 single family homes being built. They don't have to go through this arduous process. So
Or it's voluntary.
Or it's
Yeah.
voluntary, yeah, exactly. So they can opt out of it. Or
But
not.
in BC, we have the CRT, which is really easy and fast to get paid for small amounts of money, right? The
Small amounts,
civil
Strata
resolution.
disputes. Yeah.
So every single time you have a $5,000 claim, they'll just set up a phone court date and you'll get a judgment. That's the Civil Resolution Tribunal.
Right.
Yeah.
And
That's
I've had a couple awarded to me.
Yeah, the CRT is an interesting novel idea, but I think that wouldn't work in a construction on a construction project because the amounts involved are too great for that kind of jurisdiction. So, but yeah, maybe that's something that the task force considers, is to say, look, any provincial infrastructure project must be governed by a prompt payment legislation. And if you have a project less than 2 million, it's voluntary. You can opt in or out. I don't know the thresholds. I'm not up to date with what the task force is looking at or considering. I don't want people to think this is some form of panacea where everything is going to be fine with this system. It's not.
Tim, pro tip. You told me this. You can write it into your contract.
Well, you couldn't because it's you can't contract out of it in Ontario.
But you can get the paid when paid clause within 7 days put into your contract.
Sure, you could, but
Whether that's actually accepted or
No, they do. They do. Every single one of mine.
And but then still
As paid within 7 days of being paid.
Yeah.
But it's also about recourse, right? I mean, it's when you don't get paid on day 8.
What do you do?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
You file a lawsuit.
Yeah, what lever
for
are you
breach
going to
of
pull?
contract?
Right.
Now you're in court for
Well,
2.5 years.
Exactly, yeah.
that's when you need to lawyer up.
Okay, well then, it goes back to that question about when is it that you need to lawyer up, and how much does the contractor need to just be educated on their own, right?
Yeah.
Like, what do you would like? I'd imagine there's certain files, and we're not fully done. Maybe this prompt payment conversation quite yet, but I'm sure there's certain files where you're thinking, oh man, this person, this company could probably figure this out, and you might just give them a bit of advice and send them on their way in a nice way, or you're like, well, these people really need my help. Is there must be some sort of a threshold?
There is, yeah. I mean, a lot of times I get 5-6 calls a day on a regular day, and I'll send 5 of them away because I just there's no point in me helping them. Their quantum is too small, so they come to me and say, look, I'm owed 5, 10, 15, 20 grand. I understand. I'm not belittling that kind of money. That's a lot of money to anyone. The problem is legal fees add up very quickly. Very, very quickly. So you have to be really careful about engaging a lawyer for the wrong reasons. A lot of lawyers will commence a small claims action for you when the amount they want is 10 grand, and it's so silly because you're going to spend 10 grand on that lawyer, and you can't recover your costs in small claims. So you have to be really careful who you hire. Most lawyers in the construction bar are excellent, so they will give proper legal advice. But a lot of times people don't even know they're construction lawyers out there.
Right.
So,
Right.
you and then there's contractors that come to me and say, look, like I haven't been paid, 400 grand. And I'll say, send me the contract. And you see that they have a net 30-day payment clause in it from delivery of an invoice. And, a simple demand letter to the owner or the GC resolves that, because you say, look, pay it as pursuant to the contract or you're in breach. And by the way, we'll also register a lien and we'll lock up your entire project. So which route do you want to go in this instance? And sometimes you can get a very quick result, but you have to act proactively. You cannot call a construction lawyer with a 4-month-old invoice and say, hey, can you help me? Certainly, that's a breach of contract claim, and you can file that for up to 2 years under the limitation period. But you're hurting yourself because you could have registered a claim of lien and had an in rem right against the project land. So that's much more powerful.